So today I'm going to be doing a quick breakdown of this short musical idea that I've created. I think it perfectly exhibits my favourite sound design tool of them all, Granular synthesis, which I use in almost all of my ambient music compositions. This track is heavily inspired by the ambient subgenre dream punk. This genre combines 80s vintage vaporwave synth music with more experimental ambient music by composers such as Brian Eno and State of Zero. To start, I'm going to talk about how I created the main pad. Pads like the example in this track and in typical dream punk music are quite floaty, quite metallic and quite chaotic, as they have loads of city soundscapes and jungle foley layered on top of all the melodic elements. The VST I am using today is called Quanta by Audio Damage. The trick lies in the sound selection rather than the engine itself. Sometimes for more melodic control I take one-shots and put those in the Granular engine and then play my own sort of chords as a basic melody. In this case, for a more free-spirited sounding pad, I chose to take a fully produced Future Garage track and simply place this into an oscillator as a start point. The percussion elements are what give this synth its more grainy and noisy sort of textures, along with the melodic sort of pads and pianos played alongside it. From here onwards, I decided to experiment with the length, position and number of grains to get a sound that was not only random and spacious but also harmonic enough for me to play some parallel chords as a basis. I also adjusted the width parameter to give the synth a more extreme sort of stereo feel. It was then simply a case of filtering out the lower frequencies of the pad to leave more room for both the kick and the sub. I spend less time experimenting with the synth's parameters and more time experimenting with the sounds themselves, as they have a much more drastic change on the textures and sounds that you end up with. And then I sort of scroll through different sounds, full tracks or one-shots, to find a sound that sort of speaks to me. The sub bass is a simple sine wave with tasteful amounts of saturation. This would simply copy the chords that are being played by playing the root notes of each of them. To start building ideas around the pad, I like to use a plugin made by Loop Masters called Loop Cloud. My favourite feature with this plugin is that when loaded into your chosen DAW, it allows you to scroll through individual sample packs or indeed full sample packs while working on your song. It also uses tempo and key sync for a more seamless workflow. What I like to do is audition the samples one at a time next to the pad, whether they be one-shots or loops, to see which one of them is the best fit. From there onwards, it is a case of mixing them together and balancing audio levels. Another plugin I like to use for ambient music is called Delay. It's a free delay plugin which, when given a higher diffuse value, almost turns the wet signal from an echo into a reverb, which creates a wash of ambient textures. This plugin also has different modes for the wet signal, which when changed give an almost call and response effect to the melody by adjusting the pitch of the wet signal. This, coupled with the ducking parameter, is what gives the back and forward effect for the melody. Moving on to the drums, which have a more compressed, distorted and industrial sound compared to the rest of the music, are a combination of layering one-shots and loops found in Loop Cloud. My typical process when designing drums is to use multiple layers. In this case I have one for impact and a final layer for effects. They are then given some extreme parallel compression to completely squash the dynamics. The kick is then given a boosted low end by Reason's very own Audiomatic Retro Transformer. The melody and the sub are then sidechained to give this automatic ducking effect whenever the kick is triggered. Finally, we move on to the percussion. In a similar fashion to the way I crafted the melody, I scrolled through various percussion loops to find ones that I liked. Again, not really paying attention to which genre they're from, but more or less just finding a good fit for the track. I ended up using a couple of drum and bass loops which were then slowed down, had the lows filtered out, were sidechained, compressed, and then mixed together with the kick and snare to give this sort of industrial trip-hop-esque loop.